Karen O, her name probably is synonymous at this point with indie music, especially the modern revival that happened in the early 2000s. There have been so many artists that I've highlighted on this channel that, have just come out of that era. Think of like people like Ben Gibbard. I think of huge people that contributed bands like Arcade Fire and Block Party, Kelly Okereke, Babatunde, TV on the radio. Karen O definitely inserts herself into that group of people. In fact, we're going to talk about this a little bit in the intro coming up, but she was in that music scene in New York City during the early 2000s. That definitely contributed to the height of popularity of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. And what's really cool is because of a lot of songs, becoming background music for TikTok clips, Maps is one of the songs that was recently selected, at least within the last couple of years now. And so that song has gotten like a huge second life amongst a new generation of fans. And no band and no person is more really earning of that honor than the Yeah Yeah Yeahs and Maps. So we will talk about where Karen O came from, the rise of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and really their lasting influence on the indie music genre. Welcome to the channel. If you've been here before, welcome back. Like I mentioned briefly, we talk about all things indie music, especially from the early 2000s. And I want to give a huge shout out to you guys. We've passed over 1,700 subscribers. We just keep building, just slowly and steadily. We don't try to make huge changes here on this channel. You know what it is. We talk about the things that you all want to hear. And definitely, if there's a band for me to check out, comment it below. I by no means know every single indie band out there. So I always am open to listening to new music. And I have on this channel. I've been able to listen to bands I've never listened to before, or maybe it's a band that I've heard about and never really checked out. So that's been a really cool experience. But without further ado, let's get back into Karen O. Now let's rewind time back to the early 2000s. Now let me pause right here. If you have not seen my video on this channel about the New York City scene in the early 2000s, please check it out, because that will be a deeper dive into what was happening there. But to be brief, let's go back to the early 2000s. What was happening? Well, the grunge movement from the 90s and the ska movement from the mid 90s to late 90s was starting to wind down. There was a new genre starting to perform. And speaking of that, nu metal was one of them. That was one genre that was starting to come out. Pop punk was starting to become big in the music scene. And of course, this was right around the time where hip hop was about to make a huge leap into the mainstream media. But there was something else that was coming out, especially in two areas. One of them was in the UK with the rise of bands like the Arctic Monkeys. Another one was New York City. Who was coming out of New York City? Well, bands like The Strokes, bands like TV on the Radio, and bands like Interpol. But another one that was starting to come out was the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Karen O is the Yeah Yeah Yeahs lead singer, really front woman, and just face of the overall band. Now, of course, they only have 3 members. It's not a huge group as it is, but Karen really just stands out. You think of, there are so many front women of music, especially nowadays. It's really exploded nowadays. But, even in the early 2000s, and especially in rock and roll, that was not too common yet. And you think of before her, they had to kind of fit a certain stereotype. They had to kind of just be loud and obnoxious, or it had to be a very polished image. But Karen O was really none of those things at all. Now, what's really cool about her performances is they were all very unique in a couple of ways. Number one, Her outfits. Many of her outfits are handmade by a designer. And they're not designer clothing per se. It was very colorful, kind of out there outfits that maybe people, your normal person wouldn't put together. But they weren't overly expensive. They weren't showy to just draw attention to herself. Rather, it was her way of expressing herself. Her performance on stage, her audience participation, the back and forth is another one. The energy she brought to her shows, was just raw and emotional. She really, it wasn't just like okay, let's get up on stage, let's perform the songs, let's perform the hits and get off. It was just really driving home to the audiences the energy and emotion behind the fans, the songs that they all loved. So I would say more than anything, she blended together punk rock and the energy that comes from punk and blended it with the kind of indie emotional side of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs music. There is no better example than this next one. Now, again, I've talked about this in another video on this channel about the song Maps by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. That video has become iconic, especially in the indie music scene. The shot of her seemingly crying while singing the lyrics along with the lyrics to the song Maps has really become a huge staple in the history of indie music. A lot of people wonder if it was performance, and a lot of people think it was real. The full story behind that, please check out. But I mean, there's no doubt, if you know who Karen O is, if you love indie music, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. And kind of winding down this video, she is a legend in the indie world. She still makes music. She has made music for films, for TV shows, even solo work that she's collaborated with Danger Mouse about. And the Yeah Yeah Yeahs themselves, the last album that they did together was only in 2022. But more than that, she is seen as many as one of the pioneers of the, as I said in the intro, of the modern day indie movement. Many people remember and can still see her lively, energetic performances where she's even broken her leg at one point of time, her colorful outfits, but more than anything, the emotion and the intensity of her music writing and performing. That's where I want to leave with you guys here. This is a summary of Karen O and the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. What do you guys think of them? Have you listened to them before? Check them out if you haven't, and I will see you all next week. Peace.